Gertrude of Merania, Queen of Hungary, and Agnès Sorel, the first officially recognized mistress to a French king. One a princess, the other a minor aristocrat. What could these two young women born 2 centuries apart possibly have in common? Let's travel back in time now to the 12th and 15th centuries to meet them. 2 women who, despite their differences, were both murdered for the same reason: the power and the influence that they held over the men in their lives and the fame and status they had achieved because of it. Welcome to Medieval Madness. Queen Gertrude of Hungary. Gertrude was born into the house of Andech sometime in 1185. She was the second daughter of Count Berthold IV, the Duke of Merania, and Agnes of Rawcliffe from the Saxon House of Wettin. Berthold had assumed the title of Duke of Merania around 1180 to 1182. The Duchy of Merania was a fiefdom of the Holy Roman Empire on the Adriatic sea coast of the Kvarner Gulf near Croatia. No one is sure as to the territorial extent of the duchy, which was probably small. Nevertheless, its dukes were recognized as princes. Pretty woman. Like most high-ranking medieval men, Gertrude's father had high ambitions for his children and wanted his daughters to make political marriages of importance. This wouldn't be a problem, as Gertrude, like her sisters, was famous for being a great beauty. Gertrude's older sister Hedwig became High Princess of Poland, and her younger sister Agnès married King Philip II of France. Gertrude herself married the Abhad Prince Andrew II, King of Hungary, sometime in the late 1190s. Andrew was the younger son of King Bela III of Hungary, and his marriage meant that he took the side of his father-in-law and supported Duke Philip of Swabia in the conflict over the German throne. In 1196, Andrew's older brother Emmerich succeeded their father to the throne, but sibling rivalry soon began, and Andrew challenged his brother for the crown. King Emmerich had backed King Otto IV of Germany during the dispute, and Andrew came off worse in the troubles with his brother. Andrew was imprisoned, and Gertrude was, quote, stripped of her possessions, and Emmerich permitted her to return to her homeland, when Andrew was captured in 1203. After falling ill, Emmerich had his infant son Ladislas III crowned king in August of 1204 and reconciled with his brother. According to the great chronicler of the Croatian lands, Thomas the Archdeacon, Emmerich gave Andrew, quote, the guardianship of his son and the administration of the entire kingdom until the ward should reach the age of majority. Despite this, Duke Andrew ignored the boy, which resulted in his mother, Constance of Aragon, fleeing to Austria with her child, where he unexpectedly died in exile in Vienna. Andrew was now King of Hungary, and he recalled his wife Gertrude with great honor. Jealousy, jealousy. In 1205, Queen Gertrude used her considerable influence at court to have the youngest Andech brother, Berthold, elected Archbishop of Kalocsa, Hungary. This was even though Pope Innocent III wrote to King Andrew expressing his doubts as to Berthold's suitability for the role because of his youth and inexperience. Meanwhile, in 1208, Gertrude's brother Ecbert had become Bishop of Bamberg, Germany. After Ecbert and their other brother, Henry II Margrave of Istria, were suspected of being involved in King Philip of Swabia's assassination, they both fled to Hungary to the safety of their sister Gertrude. Now the Queen and her 3 brothers were well embedded into the Hungarian court. The Dominican hagiographer Dietrich of Alpolda referred to Gertrude's masculine characteristics because of her influence over governmental affairs. Around 1212, Gertrude resided over judicial matters during the lawsuit between Abbot Euros of Pannonhalma and the castle serfs of Pressburg. While the king was away on campaign in both Bulgaria and Halych, an East Slavic principality, she acted as a royal governor. It's clear that Gertrude was influential at the Hungarian court, and King Andrew leaned on her for assistance in running the country. In a chronicle from 1210, it is mentioned that, quote, because the king of the Hungarians was able to capture a certain stronghold with his own troops, he employed, by the advice of his wife, who was German by birth, an army consisting of Germans who were staying in his land. During this time, Gertrude's brother Berthold was by her side, supporting her, and he was given the title of Ban of Slavonia, making him the governor of the kingdoms of Hungary and Croatia, voivode of Transylvania, and Ispan of the counties of Bax and Budrug. Although Queen Gertrude was popular with the common people, this sort of nepotism did not go down well with the Hungarian nobles, and was probably what caused the incident that followed. While the king was on campaign in Galicia, a plot was hatched to murder the queen. Traitor. There is no contemporary source for what happened in late September 1223, but the 19th century Hungarian historian Gaiu Lapola believed that Queen Gertrude was hunting in the royal forest with her brother Berthold and the Austrian Duke Leopold VI in the Pilis Hills. A group of Hungarian nobles stormed her field tent and assassinated her. It's thought that she was horribly mutilated and her body was torn apart. The only known perpetrator was Peter, son of Tor, a Hungarian noble and former confidant of the Queen. Gertrude was quickly buried in Pilis Abbey. King Andrew, on hearing the news of the murder of his wife, returned home immediately from his campaign in Heidelberg and ordered the execution of Peter, who was impaled. At the same time, many of his accomplices were pardoned. The brutality of his mother's death traumatized her eldest son Bela and drove him to seek revenge by confiscating the estates of many of the conspirators once he became Duke of Transylvania. Agnès Sorel, Royal Mistress. Let's move now from one queenly victim to another medieval woman who rose to the heights of power only to be brought down once again by jealousy and prejudice. Agnès Sorel was born in 1422. Her family were minor nobles from the historical French province of Touraine. By the early 1440s, Agnès had become a lady-in-waiting to Isabella, Duchess of Lorraine, in the household of René I of Naples. As Isabella was sister-in-law to the Queen Marie d'Anjou, this meant that Agnès would often accompany her mistress to various royal functions. It was on one of these occasions at a festival in Nancy, when Agnès was aged about 20 or 21, that she was first introduced to King Charles VII, who was twice her age. The most beautiful girl in the world. The French king quickly became besotted with Agnès, and she was transferred into the service of Queen Marie as a lady-in-waiting. She soon became the king's paramour and stood out as the favourite, and the king made no attempt to hide the fact. Even though Agnès was still officially part of Queen Marie's retinue, she was gifted a household of her own, unlike earlier mistresses who were given a modest income. Like Gertrude, Agnès was known for her attractiveness, and she was named the Dame de Beauté, the Lady of Beauty. She was famous for wearing particularly low-cut gowns, causing a scandal at the French court, where her fashions were both copied and reviled in equal measure. It caused the Archbishop of Reims to counsel the king on the appropriateness of such gowns that had, quote, front openings through which one sees the teats, nipples, and breasts of women. Agnès was also the subject of several works of art in her own lifetime, including the Milan Diptych by Jean Foucault. In this painting, Agnès was depicted as the Mother of God. The fact that appalled courtiers as the mother of the king's illegitimate children was compared to the Virgin Mary. In the 19th century, the French politician and historian François-Frédéric Steenackers said, quote, Agnès had all at once, by a rare privilege, a superior beauty of the body and the soul, with this physical and moral vitality that satisfied all the demands of love. Despite the scandal and gossip, the king lavished Agnès with gifts including castles and jewellery. Even though the wearing of diamonds by a commoner was banned 200 years earlier by Louis XI, Agnès was reported to have worn the first cut diamond around her neck. She wore it with pride at court over her exposed bosom. Agnès was declared the first official mistress of the kings of France, a title that made her one of the most powerful medieval women in the country. In a time when women were barred from working in public office, being a royal mistress meant having great political power with just a whisper into the king's ear. Agnès was said to have brought the king out of a prolonged bout of the depression that often plagued his mental health. Her influence on the king and her power at court did not go unnoticed, and she made many enemies there, although some contemporary sources describe her as a pious woman. Monstrelate, the chronicler, said, quote, So this Agnès was of a very charitable way of life and liberal in almsgiving, and of her possessions she distributed widely to the poor, to the churches, and to beggars. Between 1444 and 1450, Agnès bore the king 3 daughters. She even travelled to Normandy in the depths of winter while heavily pregnant with their 4th child, just to be with him and offer him moral support. King Charles was there on military campaign as part of the 100 Years' War. Strangely, the king was not happy to see Agnès, and he sent her to the nearby Abbey of Jumièges, where she went into labour, giving birth to the couple's 4th daughter. Agnès never recovered from the birth, suffered from severe abdominal pain, and died shortly after in February of 1450. The official line was that she had died from dysentery, but there were whispers that she had been poisoned by her enemies. Like Gertrude, Agnès was just 28 years old when she died. Jealous guy. Charles' heir, the Dauphin Louis, who became King Louis XI, had entered into open rebellion against his father in 1440. It's thought that he may have had Agnès murdered because of her influence over the king. Jacques Coeur, the French minister and financier, had also been named as a suspect in her death. It is true that incredibly high levels of mercury were found in Agnès' remains when they were exhumed in 2004. Scientific tests proved that she had a concentration of up to 100,000 times more mercury than would normally be found in a body. Antoinette de Mainillet took the place of Agnès as the king's mistress after her death. She was her cousin. Legacy. Despite both Gertrude and Agnès having reputations for being power-hungry harlots, they made such a lasting impression that they were remembered and celebrated long after their lives were cut short. Gertrude is the main character in the play Bankbaan, written by Joseph Katona in 1819, and an opera of the same name composed by Ferenc Erkel in 1861. Both the opera and the play soon became popular in Hungary. Agnès has a main part in the poem La Pucelle by Voltaire, and she is the subject of an 1836 opera named after her. She is also in two Russian operas from the late 19th century, The Maid of Orleans by Tchaikovsky and The Saracen. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Medieval Madness. Please do subscribe if you're enjoying these videos, and I'll see you next week for another one. Until then, hope you all have an awesome week. Cheers!